38 now here on Kiwi, and this morning we're talking gaming because a new report has been released by the Interactive Games and Entertainment Association. They're calling it Digital New Zealand 12, basically looking at the digital landscape for people at home and I suppose where they work and where they go and all their mobile devices as well. Dr. Jeffrey Brand from Bond University has put the research together, and he joins us in the Kiwi studio this morning. Good morning, Jeffrey.
Morning, Glenn.
Good morning. Now we spoke to you, I suppose it was about a year ago, wasn't it?
It was indeed, yeah, just a year and a bit.
The last time this study came out. What's changed? How are people adopting new technologies, and how are they spending their leisure time?
Yeah, look, I think this is the big question really, is the whole digital media landscape, and that's something we really tried to do with this report this time, Glenn, is sort of take New Zealand, look at not just gaming devices, but all the digital devices across the household, and got a better picture, I think, of sort of what's happening in New Zealand homes. And I think, for me, the big story really is, one, households with game devices are more digitally, supplied. They've just got more gear at home and more ways of accessing lots of content. Not just the one gadget. That's it, yeah. So, we're talking flat panel screen TVs, obviously. Like 75% of New Zealand households have a flat panel screen TV.
Right.
And those old CRTs are on their way out, but obviously still in some bedrooms with game devices hooked up to them.
Because we've got that digital switch off coming on soon.
That's right. And this is happening, of course, all over the world.
Or switch on, I should say.
Digital
switch off, yeah.
Funny, I knew what you meant.
Yeah.
And I think this is a big story, and so people are sort of making that move. One of the things that interests me, just looking down the list of technologies, is game households are just really rich with lots of cool gadgets, and I don't think it's so much the gadgets, but what they're doing for people. And also the big story is mobile phones, obviously, around the world.
Yeah, surely we must be seeing more and more people with smartphones now that Android is in the market and quite competitive.
That's it. You've got really two big platforms now competing, head to head for audience attention or consumer consumer wallets. And what we did this time, what we didn't do last time, was we included mobile phones quite specifically in this research. And it bumps up when you start accommodating mobile phones added to other devices for, say, playing computer games. You start seeing that, in fact, 93% of New Zealand households have a device for playing games. Now, last year we reported 88.5%.
Yeah.
So you add the phones in there on top of that, and of course those people will also have those other game devices, but it adds a few more gamers into the mix.
Okay. And staying with mobile phones, is that now coming at the expense of doing something else? Do we know that? Are people spending time looking at their phone as opposed to reading or doing something else?
Actually, they're reading on their phones quite a bit, and we're seeing e-books, particularly amongst gamers, picking up sort of in the mid 40% range. Game households and gamers using mobile phones are also getting e-text. But it does also increase and change the way we play games. We're playing games for shorter periods of time. We're snacking on them.
Yeah.
So we've got a bit of downtime. We jump in and play a quick, casual game. And that could be online or offline, but the point is we're there playing.
Are people spending money on games, like on their mobile device?
Yeah, absolutely. We don't have specific data on downloads, and units, let's say. But what we are seeing is people saying that they like overall they're increasing the number of games that they're downloading. We didn't specify that, Glenn, just for mobile phones, but we're seeing an increase in digital downloads, which is interesting.
Does it have flow-on effects? Are people demanding better technology or, say, better internet because they're doing all this gaming?
Look, one of the things that we asked in this survey was, look, if you had a better option for faster broadband, and you're a gamer, would you be inclined to want to sort of jump to that? And roughly, 1 in 5 said, look, yeah, I'd really look at that very seriously if it gave me, faster downloads.
Is there a typical gamer?
Well, that's the story, isn't it? When I started doing this research years ago, trying to give, the Oceania region something to compare with, say, Europe and Japan and North America, one of the things I found was that there was a typical gamer, and that gamer was more male and was younger. But what we see now is that gamers really run right across the spectrum in the New Zealand population, and this is true across the ditch as well. What we're seeing is older gamers. 43% of New Zealanders are over the age of 51 and playing games.
What kind of games?
Well, we've got a full range. I mean, the oldest gamers in this study said things like they're playing mahjong and games on the PC, and that's the other really interesting thing for me. PC gaming in New Zealand is still really important.
Yeah,
but it is being eroded by the phone, definitely.
And PC gaming would include anything within the browser as well?
Absolutely. So we're talking casual games, social games, social network games, and that's something we also measured. They're picking up as well, of course, and attracting wider audiences.
Because one thing I've noticed as a Facebook user is that initially on Facebook a few years ago, you saw all these games popping up into your social feed. I don't see any of that now. Does that mean that less people are playing them?
Well, I think it means that people are moving what they're playing with, and they're not using them to post and update their status quite as much. Right. I think that's an important one. I think we all got status fatigue.
So there's some social etiquette now around gaming.
There is, and I think we're getting smarter as we are becoming more literate in games. Again, we're getting a lot more people doing snack gaming, so they're popping in for a few minutes, and they know that they don't want to really take up bandwidth by letting everybody know that they've just leveled up in Farmville or Hospitalville or whatever ville they're in.
Yeah.
But I think the other thing is games like Words with Friends on mobile phones and just posting those updates and having leaderboards, that sort of thing is happening, and that's a little bit less intrusive.
Okay. Any issues with parents and children? Monitoring of gaming and that sort of thing?
Well, one of the things that is very important for me to sort of let people know is that if you're a parent and you're gaming, and in Australia in Australia it's 88% of parents with kids under the age of 18 playing. In New Zealand it's 79%, so it's a really interesting comparison. I think we want parents to be playing games so that they know what's in them, and they can help their kids choose what to play and sort of make it part of the family. What I really like about the New Zealand data is that it does show that parents are using the classification system.
Right.
If they don't know what's in the game, so they actually default to that for their kids. But if they want to play a game themselves, they don't use it very much because they tend to know what they want.
There's a difference between the New Zealand and Australian classifications of games, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. Although that's going to change. The Australian government has decided on an R18 plus for Australia, so that means that it'll bring us a little bit more in line with New Zealand.
So does that mean that games that have traditionally been banned will now be available in Australia?
Well, that's the big debate going on at the moment, because there's been a lot of talk about changing the MA 15 plus category and moving some of those games up into the R18 plus range.
Right.
Look, I think what's going to happen is most of the games that were refused classification in Australia will still be refused classification because they fall afoul of the of the classification scheme by having sexualized violence and that sort of thing.
Okay, let's finally look at the business of gaming in New Zealand, the gaming industry itself. The people who produce these games. Is that growing?
It is. I mean, there's some really great success stories. In fact, one of the rugby games that's exported all over the world is made down in Wellington by a group. They've got 115 employees, and they're looking for more. That's a lot of full-time employees, a lot of seats developing games. One of the funny stories, in a way, is that Australia has been losing seats or full-time positions making games, and New Zealand's been growing that business, which is really cool.
Have we been stealing jobs?
Look, I don't think so. I think some of those big AAA titles in the marketplace have sort of given way to mobile games, and some studios have been smarter about it than others in Australia, and there's just that transition. I call it sort of the iPhone effect. But what we are seeing is that certainly in New Zealand there is a clear understanding that this is digital. Digital production is important. And growing those jobs is a part of the plan. So
all this is really interesting data, and now you've been doing this. It's the second year that the study's been running.
That's right, Glenn.
So how useful is it going forward? Who's going to be able to use this kind of stuff?
Well, I think what we're seeing now in the Australian scene is that the government is actually using the data to understand what's happened over a period of time, because we started this back in 2005, in Australia, and so now we have 4 data points, 5, 7, 9, and 11. And what I'd like to see for New Zealand is to have 3 or 4 years of good data, so that we can then sort of say, okay, well, this is where everything is trending. I mean, for example, when I talked to you last year, 43% of all gamers were female. This year, we're looking at 47%. Now, is that a trend, or is the margin of error in survey research responsible for this? I can't tell you.
We'll find out next year.
Exactly.
I suppose. Dr. Jeffrey Brand is from Bond University, and we've been looking at the new report called Digital New Zealand 12 from the Interactive Games and Entertainment Association. Thanks very much for your time this morning.
Thank you, Glenn.
Time now here on Kiwi.